When I was a kid, one of my favorite stories was The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. The tale of a superstitious schoolteacher who moves from Connecticut to a small town in the state of New York, only to be chased off in the end by the ghost of a headless specter on horseback. It was as spooky as it was intriguing. My favorite adaptation of the story, however, was the Rabbit Ears Illustrated Storybook VHS narrated by Glenn Close. We would rent this VHS from the public library so often, it was likely that we were the only ones who ever rented it. One day, however, we rented a different adaptation of Sleepy Hollow. This one came from the year 1999 and was a made-for-TV CGI animated special called Night of the Headless Horseman. Now, I was used to the more family-friendly version by Rabbit Ears, with its brightly colored illustrations, calming music, and mysterious narration by Glenn Close. Night of the Headless Horseman, on the other hand, scared the crap out of me. A little bit of history before we dive in. Night of the Headless Horseman is not very well known, being made for TV and airing on the Fox network in October of 1999. Despite being a made-for-TV production, the cast was surprisingly stacked. William H. Macy, Mark Hamill, Clancy Brown, Jeff Bennett, Luke Perry, Bill Fagerbach. These are some big-name voice actors. The score, composed by Simon Sargon, was a lot more bombastic than the subtle Rabbit Ears production, though still more subtle than Walk-In. And while the Rabbit Ears production of Sleepy Hollow was spooky but charming, this one is uncomfortable. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The Rabbit Ears version starts by telling the history of Sleepy Hollow, drawing the audience into a sort of calming, hypnotic trance. How does Night of the Headless Horseman start? In a very scarring way. We then see Washington Irving, the author of the story, talking to a stranger who narrates the story. We see Ichabod Crane, voiced by William H. Macy, being given a tour of Sleepy Hollow by Hans Van Ripper, voiced by Mark Hamill. And honestly, I just hear the Joker.
And over there, you see the richest farm in the valley. Old Van Tassel has wealth.
Ichabod's attention is drawn to the beautiful Katrina Van Tassel and all of her PS2 cutscene glory. And it's here we meet the best part of this special, Brom Bones, voiced by Luke Perry, whose voice for Brom is so awful that it's actually perfect.
Sniffing around with that great bloodhound nose of his.
It's so over-the-top masculine and macho that it's actually perfect for the character. Katrina is pissed that Brom won't get serious and propose to her, and Ichabod sees this as a perfect opportunity to try and steal a stranger's girlfriend. Ichabod agrees to give Katrina singing lessons, hoping to woo Katrina, marry her, and in turn become heir to the Van Tassel estate and all its wealth. Yeah, we kind of forget that Ichabod was a bit of a dick. Anyway, you might have picked up on the main problem with this special. The animation. It sucks. I'm sure in 1999 for a TV special it was passable, but today, 26 years later, it's aged like milk. Also, while I appreciate the more spooky atmosphere and fall colors, did they have to make the environments look dead and rotten? I mean, the sky looks like someone smeared mud on the lens, for crying out loud. But anyway, later that night, while staying with the Van Ripper family, because Ichabod is a deadbeat bum, Van Ripper tells the story of the Headless Horseman, voiced by Clancy Brown, doing whatever accent this is.
Yeah, I help you. I help you meet the devil!
The soldier lights a fuse to a cannon which fires and... Yeah, this right here is when it was confirmed this ain't for kids. This special is surprisingly gruesome for a TV movie. Decapitation, blood, a couple mild swears, but the worst scene comes later. Ichabod is asleep in the schoolhouse and has a nightmare. And... yeah, just look. Luckily, he's woken from his slumber by Patrick Star, who tells him he's invited to the Van Tassel household for their harvest festival where
Fine food and drink and dance are had by all.
Ichabod goes to the party on a broken-down horse named Gunpowder, who, given the horrifying nature of this movie, I'm surprised didn't look like this, and attends the party where everyone dances like this. Ichabod wants to propose to Katrina, despite not knowing her very long, but he's pulled over to the room with the other men to tell scary stories. It's here that Brom tells his story about outracing the Headless Horseman.
I challenge you, sir. Let us race to the old bridge. For the bridge you may not pass if the legend is true. If you win the race, then you are free to take my head from me.
After the party, presumably after being let down by Katrina, Ichabod starts his journey back. And I do have to give credit to William H. Macy. He actually does a pretty good job with the role of Ichabod.
No, it's only thunder. Gunpowder, dear fellow, don't be afraid. The suggestion of a tale, a man's fancy, the darkness, a storm, how they can play upon the mind.
But soon, he comes across the Headless Horseman, who chases him through the forest. And I gotta say, the theme of the Horseman is actually pretty great in this. Ichabod crosses the church bridge, knowing from the tales of the horseman that he cannot cross the church bridge without bursting into fire and brimstone. As he turns, however, he sees the horseman throw his pumpkin head right at him. Much like the other stories, we get a sort of epilogue. Gunpowder is found at his master's gate, but no one can find Ichabod. We learned that Brom finally nutted up and proposed to Katrina, who was definitely using Ichabod to make Brom jealous. But again, Ichabod is kind of a dick, so it evens out. Everyone is terrible. We cut back to the narrator talking to Washington Irving. He says that Ichabod was never seen in Sleepy Hollow ever again. Now, the original story implies that Brom dressed as the horseman to scare Ichabod, and Ichabod fled Sleepy Hollow and moved upstate, where he became a justice of the 10-pound court in another part of New York. Here, though, it's heavily implied that Ichabod was killed. Irving says that it's a wonderful tale and only wishes that it had some truth to it. It's here that the narrator, revealed to be Brom Bones, tells him that Brom made a pact with the Headless Horseman, offering his head in exchange for dealing with Ichabod, and that after Katrina's death, he would take the horseman's place, and then this happens.
Hold on to it for me while I go in search of another one, won't you?
What the hell was that?
And that's Night of the Headless Horseman. It's not good, but it's not bad either. Most of the voice actors do a good job. The style is interesting, if not a bit clunky and awkward. And man, what they lack in subtlety, they deliver in freaky scenes. I actually think the janky animation actually makes these scenes even more uncanny and terrifying. You can find this special online for free if you want to check it out. Let me know what you guys think. Did you ever see this special? Did it freak you out? Leave a comment below and subscribe for more. We'll see you next time on Realm of Concordia, where nerds roam free.